Ken Livingstone is the former mayor of London, a close friend of Jeremy Corbyn, and among those who has been criticised by the Equality and Human Rights Commission report yesterday into failures to tackle anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. They said he'd been accused of having committed harassment against Labour Party members of Jewish ethnicity and of dismissing complaints of anti-Semitism as fake or smears. The report said Mr Livingstone was not protected by freedom of speech laws when he said that social media posts by Labour MP Naz Shah, including a graphic which very much was a anti-Semitic meme, were not anti-Semitic. Good morning to you, Ken. Do you accept the? Do you accept the statements in the report in full?
No, I knew it was going to be a con because, given the seriousness of the allegation they make against me, why didn't they ask to interview me and question me?
They didn't interview at all.
No, literally, I sent them a long statement. They never got back to me. And, yes, ridiculous. To make allegations like this, implying that I'm anti-Semitic without actually having brought me in and questioned me. If I wasn't a pensioner, if I was a millionaire, I'd sue them for libel.
Would their argument be that they're not actually investigating what you did, they're investigating the party's handling of the matter? Ken Livingstone, have we lost it? Ken, can you start again? Because I think we lost your line for a moment. I said they're investigating the party's handling of the matter, not what you individually did, in which case, did they need to interview you?
Well, look, I was on Labour's National Executive Committee when I was suspended by the General Secretary. And it all started, you had that Labour MP, John Mann, got a television crew to film him shouting in my face, I'm a Nazi apologist. Then he launches this big lie that I'd said Hitler was a Zionist. And then the General Secretary of the Labour Party suspends me without bothering to pick up the phone to say, have you said Hitler's a Zionist? And even yesterday, when I was being interviewed by one TV crew, I'm still being asked, why did you say Hitler was a Zionist? How can anybody after 4.5 years not have checked whether I actually said it?
Do you accept, though, that the Labour Party does have a problem with anti-Semitism since Jeremy Corbyn became leader?
No, and literally, when Jeremy became leader, something like 250,000 new people joined. And then he got rid of the old General Secretary, the one who suspended me, brought in a good new one. And she conducted an investigation of all our 500,000 members. We found that about 250 or 300 had tweeted something anti-Semitic. They were suspended or expelled. Jeremy got the problem dealt with within weeks.
If he'd got the problem dealt with within weeks, why did so many Jewish MPs feel the need to leave? Why did people like Louise Ellman and Ruth Smeeth and Margaret Hodge and Luciana Berger, why did they need police protection from threats of violence? Why could they not hold constituency meetings with people without having a police officer present, or travel on the public transport without having someone with them to protect them? If it was all dealt with and it was all fine, why were they feeling under so much threat? Or did they just make it up?
When you get accusations like this dominating the news, you then get people who are generally anti-Semitic, not Labour Party members, but pursuing someone, threatening them, accessing their website and things like that. So, that wasn't Labour Party members, threatening violence, but there are quite, I remember there was an opinion poll when I was mayor, and it showed, I think, something like 6 or 9% of people in Britain had some anti-Semitic views. So there are anti-Semites out there. But you're not going to join the Labour Party if you're anti-Semitic, because we were a haven for Jewish MPs for a century.
You say you're not going to join the Labour Party of anti-Semitic, but it was amazing how often when you see anti-Semitic tropes and messages online, or certainly I see it on my Twitter feed, how often they've got Corbynista in their Twitter bio.
Yeah, but literally, as I said, we had over 250,000 new people join, and some of them, perhaps as many as 300, had tweeted something anti-Semitic. But the new General Secretary Jeremy had appointed had them all thrown out the party within a few weeks.
So there's no problem. So the Equality and Human Rights Commission, they've wasted their time. There wasn't any need for any of this. No problem in the Labour Party. Nothing to see here. Carry on as you were.
Well, none of this is really to do with anti-Semitism, but what it was.
What's it to do with?
When Jeremy became the leader and John McDonnell was appointed as his shadow chancellor, the establishment is terrified. If we get a Labour government, it's going to crack down on all the tax dodging by corporations and billionaires. And they were desperate to prevent someone like Jeremy coming to power. And the same thing happened. You remember what was said about Bernie Sanders when he was running for president in America? He was depicted as a communist, for God's sake.
I just can't believe we're still having this conversation all these years on, Ken.
Well,
I genuinely despair. This is all basically, it's all a conspiracy against Jeremy Corbyn by all the rich people. I'm assuming some of those rich people will be Jewish people, Ken, who didn't want him coming to power. So it's all been made up. And all of these MPs who've been staunch Labour MPs for years, left the party, felt they weren't welcome in the party, felt fearful for their lives. It was all just made up because they didn't want Corbyn coming in and putting people's taxes up. Genuinely, do you really believe that?
Yes, I do. It was a handful of MPs left, and
that's all right then. What about if a handful of black MPs left the Labour Party because they felt that they weren't welcome or safe in the Labour Party? Would that be okay? Because it's just a handful. It doesn't really matter.
No, that would be a genuine case of racism, and
that would be racism. Well, because black people can be victims of racism, but not Jewish people.
If you're Jewish or black, you join the Labour Party because we have 100 years of standing up to every form of racism.
Apparently you
and the simple fact is this is about preventing a left-wing government coming to power. And that's what they were terrified. Jeremy Corbyn would create the most radical government since the 1945 Attlee government.
Do you not think that it was the British people who prevented a left-wing radical government getting into power, and that was their choice in a free and fair election?
Look, the opinion polls, were really good for Jeremy when he got in. And then you just felt all these...
Well, then people got to know him.
Anti-Semitism. And don't forget, in the 2017 election, he got the biggest increase in the Labour vote for 72 years. We came within 2% of defeating the Tories. But our problem was, Jeremy, when he became leader, he inherited a parliamentary Labour Party filled with people who were brought in under the Blair regime. And many of them weren't really Labour. Blair really tried to change the Labour Party away from being socialist.
Okay. Speechless is not often, is it? It's not often, but every now and then. Ken Livingstone, former mayor of London, who says that the entire Equality Human Rights Commission report was a con. And he says he would sue them if he had the money.